Castle Itter, the strangest battle of World War II. I'll readily admit I didn't know about this event until I played this game, and that's one of the reasons why I love to play historical war games, because then I learn about history. This is a strange battle, though battle may be a little bit of a big word. Skirmish maybe it's more adequate given the small size of the confrontation. It is about a confrontation between a group of defenders in the last days of World War II, in which they were trying to defend this castle in Austria. And it's a castle where they have French prisoners in there, you had German soldiers, some Americans came in to help, and they all worked together to defend the castle against a force from the SS. So that's an interesting coalition from, we had Germans, Americans, and French together against some Germans. The battle lasted only one day, and this is, well, the game is about that. It is a solitaire game. It also has a competitive option, but I haven't tried it. I played the game only solitaire. If you played games in the State of Siege series, then you may see similarities, because the idea is still that you're sitting in a central area on the board and automatized enemies are trying to reach that area. It is also by the same designer that designed the Pavlov House, also published by the same publisher, and you may say similarities there, nothing else because of the siege situation. But Castle Itter is a lot simpler, a lot more streamlined than Pavlov's House. That is a game that has a longer time span. It depicts weeks and weeks of struggle, so it has to do also with logistics and supplies. Here, you need to shoot the Germans before they come to get you, and this is the general idea. And you need to survive for long enough to survive through a deck of event cards. If you survive until then you win the game. If the enemies breach into one of your locations, then you lose the game. So here's the board. It's a mounted board, pretty glossy, as you can see from the glare. There's nothing really that I can do about it. The board is divided into areas marked by those white edges, in turns divided into locations, and each location has one or multiple colors. Those colors link the location to areas that the enemies use to approach your area, your defensive position. So the enemies will move along these dotted lines, and you can attack them from areas that have the same color. Basically, this is an indication of line of sight. If you're on one of these orange locations, then you can attack enemies on orange dots, light green, and so on, and light green, and so on and so forth. The numbers that you see there are indicated for functions such as when the enemies attack this or that location. The areas also have a defensive value. All the areas start with a defensive value of 6, and the value can be reduced during the game, making it easier for the enemies to attack the area itself and the people within. Since we're here, I can also tell you about the general combat mechanism that applies both when you attack them and when they attack you. Every time you resolve an attack, you will roll a number of dice. If any of them is equal to or higher than the defensive value of your target, then you score a hit. When you attack an enemy, then the enemy is eliminated. When the hit is successful against a location, then the location's defense is reduced by 1. So now the number to match or exceed to attack the keep or the people inside the keep is now 5. And this is the general idea. When you hit an enemy using the same procedure, then the enemy counter is eliminated. When one of your counters is hit in the same way, then it is disrupted and you place a disruption marker on it. If a disrupted counter gets another disruption, it is eliminated instead and it becomes a casualty. Now you start the game with only 5 units on the board, and those are units that if you don't use them is better because you'll score points at the end of the game. Because yes, it's a win or lose situation, but if you don't lose, then there are different things that will help you score points. One is to protect the French prisoners. Historically, they were in the cellar and they were told to sit there. And so if you can keep them sitting there for as long as possible, that's better. So you start with them on the board, and then you have other counters representing more defenders. You have 20 more defenders, and the first couple of turns, all you do, all of your actions is pretty much advanced deployment. That is, you will place them on the board, and you place them in locations like so. Like so. That's pretty much, maybe after a couple of turns, that's more or less what the board may look like. So the first couple of turns, the enemies will take actions against you and you will set up your defenders. The general idea is, as for the flow of the game, is that each turn you will draw three cards from the deck of event cards here, and you will resolve, and you simply do what they say. What I like to do is to set those cards aside, because then if I resolve a card, put it in a discard pile, resolve another card, put it in a discard pile, then I'm so into the strategy and what's happening that I kind of forget. Wait a second, did I resolve 3? Did I resolve 2? I don't know what is it anymore. So I take my cards, usually I make my own mini draw deck next to the discard pile. I resolve one, then I resolve another, then I resolve another. Also, the deck of enemy events is marked with numbers between 1 and 4. So you shuffle the cards of each with each number together. So you can think of that as 4 mini decks, one on top of the other. And this way there is a certain progression. So each turn you will take 5 actions. Actually, first you take your actions and then you draw 3 cards. So each turn you take 5 actions, then you draw and resolve those cards. Those cards will do bad stuff, will bring enemies on the board. Some enemies, when they get there, well, they sit there for now, but they may move. Also, here we have the pool of enemies. Whee! Suppose, for example, that there is a card that tells me add 3 riflemen. Each time that you need to add somebody on the board, you roll 2 dice and you place the counter in the corresponding locations. There are locations between 2 and 12 on the board, which means that not all locations are born equal. 7, 6, and 8, so we'll hit more often. And so suppose that I rolled a die and I rolled an 11, then I place a rifleman in the 11 location. Then suppose I roll again and I roll a 2, and then I roll another 11. Now when you place a rifleman, a scout, or a stormtrooper in a location that already has one, that counter moves the one that is already there ahead by 1. And this is how these people move. Basically move doing the conga line, like conga, 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 conga. And that's how it works. And that's how they push towards your central area. And if the conga line of evil gets to push somebody inside your location, then you lose the game. There are also other enemy units, mortars and machine gunners. They are placed on the board, but they don't leave the area where the staging area, the starting area there where you put them. Any number can be there. They're not stupid, they just stay there and shell you and shower you with death and destruction. Also, when you place one of these on the board, they immediately attack you with the number indicated there, plus other cards will cause them to attack you further. And this is a very common thing that they do. They come on the board, they attack you, or they do the conga, conga, conga line thingy. Other things that may happen, they may attack specific areas, they attack areas to disrupt you. They attack a location, then you roll a die to see what location that is. That's the number of dice that they roll up there. And again, that is how they may reduce the defense of the area. They may disrupt defenders, then you roll a die to determine which color among the possible ones they attack. Then within that color, which location they attack, and then they will attack defenders there. So they're just different things that these annoying people can do, but generally speaking, they will attack people inside the location, reduce the location, or add more people to the board. This is the general idea. As for your actions, you have several things that you can do. A common one, of course, is you will want to attack them. For attacking, looking at the markers here, you will see two numbers on top. The one on the left is the attack value, and the number on the right is the suppression value. The attack simply means that when you spend an action to attack a counter, you roll that number of dice, say 1 for that one, 1 for that one, and if you roll equal to or higher than the defense of the target, then you eliminate that target. Pretty simple. Suppression. Suppression lets you place a number of counters equal to the suppression marker, to the suppression value. So this one is 2, this one is 1. In the suppression area on the board of the same color where the marker that you're using is. And suppose I'm using Lee, who is in orange and green, and has a suppression value of 2, then I can place 2 suppression markers in the green area or in the orange area, or 1 each. If it's a multiple color location, then you can place them any way you want in those locations. What are those for? It means that when a card instructs you to add a marker to a track of that color, you can try to block them right there and then. That is, you can spend a suppression marker. For each suppression marker that you spend, you can spend multiple ones. You get to roll a die, and you get to destroy a marker, well, if you are successful using the usual procedure. So basically, you are banking attacks, maybe on tracks that you're worried about, but where there isn't anybody yet. Or there are people that are not too scary yet, and you're banking suppressions for when the scary stuff arrives. When you perform, another action that you can perform is to move from an area to another that is crossing a white edge. You can actually also move within the same area, in which case if you're moving in an area that somebody is in, you're swapping them. When you're moving from area to area, you have to land in an empty space. Also, moving within the same area is a free action, so you can combine it with attacking, with suppressing, with other things. Important things, most actions, with the exception of moving within the same area, will exhaust the counter, which means that you cannot really do anything with the counter unless you spend an action to unexhaust it. Also, each counter can do only one thing per round. You have 5 actions per round, and you have these markers to mark the counters that you did something with. And since each counter can only do one thing per round, it means that if you're recovering, you cannot also attack or do other things. And then maybe, pew, pew, I'm attacking with that one. And so after attack and resolve that one is exhausted. These two I rallied, and so on and so forth. These are really the main actions. You have some special actions. This guy can escape, as reminded by that Itter. He did historically escape and to look for help. So actually, if this guy is not in the cellar, is in some specific areas in the main location, say this one for example, and there is a facing area which is facing attacking area which is completely empty, then you can spend an action to have this guy escape. You remove him from the board, and then you shuffle this card here in the last couple of cards of the deck, which means it shortens the deck, it shortens the time that you had to survive to win the game. Other similar special actions that your defenders may have is, say, the command action that simplifies unexhausting things, people. The tank, if you're in a location with the tank values indicated there, and the counter has the T indication, then you can use those values instead of your own. The defenders had the Besotten Jenny, this tank, sitting there. And these people working on the Besotten or around the Besotten Jenny represent precisely that. Some counters have an M indication. That's a low morale. If they're in an area and there are casualties there, their morale is such that they're also eliminated. They run away crying and screaming. If you have an officer in the same location, that removes those penalties. So a couple of special things like that. But in general, you take 5 actions, most common ones: moving, firing, and rallying. Then the enemies take actions indicated by 3 cards, the most common of which are entering the board, doing the conga line, or attacking the location or the people inside the location, and continue like this until either you lose the game or you survive until the end of the deck, in which case you win the game. So Castle Itter is definitely a fun game. It is Pavlov's House little brother. Simpler, more streamlined, easier to pick up and play. Because of that, also maybe, and that would be for what somebody will not like, is a little more repetitive because you have fewer options. So at the very least, there are some options that you don't use very often. The escape option you only use once per game, if that. But it's fun to build towards the possibility to try to clear a sector, to get the guy out of the cellar in the right position, not exhausted, and so on and so forth. So although you do have options, some will be, say, I want to create a certain synergy, so these 2 people are in the same location. But as for the number and type of actions that you usually perform, it is vastly moving from one sector to the other, and actually try not to do that because then you're saving actions. But mainly, most of the actions that you will be performing are to rally, that is to unexhaust units, and to fire. And as you're firing, and roll here and roll there, again, I can see how that may feel a little samey to someone, and maybe you will miss the increased complexity of Pavlov's House, in which you have to take care of the communications and the logistics and get supplies across the river, and then from time to time also find the time to shoot someone. So this is definitely a lot more hostile, a lot more about the violent confrontation, not so much about the logistics that were not part of the original event. And so there is more of a streamlined fun because shooting SS is really always fun. That never gets old in my book, but at the same time I can see how gameplay will feel a little bit limited. You see how you want to see it, you see how you need to see it. If streamlined and intuitive or limited and repetitive is your thing. I personally enjoyed it, also maybe because in these days as I become older and grumpier, I enjoy games that are more and more streamlined and easier to pick up and play. I've been playing games with my 7-year-old daughter, war games in particular. It turned out that she really likes them, and she also likes to shoot SS characters. So that works very well, and so games that are easier to play and don't have too many rules work very well for me when I play them solitaire these days, and when I'm introducing my 7-year-old daughter to those. So I enjoyed it. I think that within a very simple system of rules and a somewhat repetitive mechanism, you still have interesting decisions, you still have interesting options. There is a mounting sense of dread. I really like how the deck is organized in different mini decks that precisely will create that general sense of progression as things get worse and worse. And again, you still have different things that you can do. There is the tank that works in slightly different ways. You have to load it, and you are organizing your forces based on different all the different capabilities. And again, I want to put this officer with somebody, the people with the tank in the tank area. When do I get the French people out of the cellar? Do I do that at all? So there's still a lot of interesting decisions here around the pim, 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 which is, again, the real heart and the real core of the game. So I found that there was enough variety and enough decisions there to keep things interesting. But I don't know that that will be everybody's approach and everybody's view. You do have tactic cards that will add more difficulty in case the game feels too easy, and I still am not there to the point where I find the game too easy and I felt the need to make it harder. Maybe one day that will be the case. But the good thing is that you have those that also add variety. I haven't played the competitive version, but basically at its core, you are, if you control the attackers, you're drawing tactic cards and the usual enemy cards, and you're choosing which ones you play in which order. So it's still probably pretty limited. I think that the main course here is still the solitaire game. So Castle Itter, it is fun, it is light, it is streamlined. It is about an event that I maybe I'm not the only one who didn't know about this or had never played a game about this. So that's just another advantage here, that is another opportunity for you to learn about history. The production is very good, it is very solid, good components, a clear rule book, so no problem from me. Castle Itter, simple and streamlined, which is a strength for me. Maybe it won't be for everybody, but this is my review, so that's the assessment I give you.